There you go, Ms. Frost.
On to start and introduce.
Introduce yourself.
Okay. Well. All right.
Oh, we're supposed to stand right here.
Oh,
Yeah,
I was
we're
trying.
good.
I thought it was facing this way too.
That's yeah. Hello. I'm Kaylene Frost. I've lived in the Inland Empire for most of my life, so that was why we decided once we joined Sub 2 that we needed more representation in this area. And so, but I joined Sub 2 and learned about creative finance back in 2022, so last year in May. And so I've been continuing to learn and understand more about creative finance and the benefits that it will create. And
oh, can you unmute it on Zoom? You gotta get to Zoom.
oh,
Unmute it.
okay.
1, 2, 3.
Now can you see it and hear? Hopefully you can see and hear
Everyone
the
got visual?
presentation.
Yeah, we're good? All right.
I think I put them on mute too, or on the laptop.
All right, and Davey's gonna help us.
All right, guys.
Right. Okay. Should we introduce ourselves again?
Take 2.
Yeah, it's
Take 2. Got it. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Justin. I'm a part of IUJV with Kaylene. We set this up just to network with people in our community. Also a part of Sub 2. Yeah, just been doing real estate, creative finance, regular cash deals for roughly about, 4 years now. We're gonna go over creative financing, just give you guys just a rundown of creative financing, seller finance, and Sub 2. Also, we're here to ask any questions or concerns anybody has while we're here.
Yes. And if you didn't hear me before, my name is Kaylene Frost, and I'm a part of Sub 2, and so learning about creative finance and the benefits that are part of the that we can bring to the community of real estate. And we'll show some of that to you today. It's going to be pretty interesting to know the differences between just a normal wholesale deal and what could be creative finance or a Sub 2. So.
All right. So, well, creative financing, IUJV, Justin, Cudjoe, and Kaylene Frost.
Is it working?
Next. Continues to hold the debt or the note of the property in the sense, right? Just another strategy to acquire property. And I know it's a little confusing with a lot of agents because they think when you bring up taking a property Sub 2, they think of assuming the loan. So there is a big difference with assuming a loan and purchasing property Sub 2, whereas with assuming a loan, they kind of run you through the whole DTI process and take your blood pretty much to acquire that note, whereas with the Sub 2 transaction, as long as you have a good TC like Davey, you can get the job done pretty smooth.
If you push down,
There we go.
there you go. Okay, it's still showing. All right, so when understanding Sub 2, you know, you'll see properties that may have no debt. And of course, when there's no debt, then we can look at possibly doing a seller finance with that seller. And, right, so if there's zero debt on the property, that's a seller finance. But if they do have a mortgage, then we can work on acquiring it Sub 2 or subject to. And so we can do it straight, you know, if they're willing, and we put a little bit of money in their pocket, and you know, they might be willing to just hand it over, you know, the debt that's already on the property, and take it over subject to that existing mortgage, like what we talked about. Now sometimes, and especially in California, you know, there's a little bit of equity involved. And so that's when we would call it a hybrid. So we would take the existing mortgage that's already on the property and we would take it over subject to, and then we would negotiate with the seller the remaining equity. And that can look different in many ways. That could be either cash out, or it can be an actual seller finance that actually is cashing out or paying back that equity. And so that's where the creative finance umbrella hangs, is finding that balance and what works, especially if we're looking at finding properties that we either need to find, an investor wants cash flow, or if we are going to take over, buy that property with the subject to, and then eventually maybe take it to market, to retail, but in the, and so there's different ways of actually acquiring it. So that's the difference between, instead of paying cash, let's say $300K for the whole thing, there's a debt on there for $250, and you take that over subject to, and so the cash that is actually going in is only like the $50K, right? So we're bringing in less cash to acquire the property, and then the exit strategy will definitely determine if it's a good deal or not.
Cool. Any questions about that? Or
Yeah, let's go back to that.
Let's say the example you put, 300,000, they owe 250, so they got $50,000 equity. And I don't think it makes sense if I don't have the $50,000. It does make sense to borrow those $50,000 from somebody and sub to, they got Gators and all these other lenders. So, but isn't that gonna be like too much interest on those $50,000 that we borrow?
so you're saying if
So we kill the deal
the
for
property's worth
myself.
300 and the note is 250
250, so to get the $50,000
to up
and buy
equity?
these.
Yes, yeah, and then that's
If
what
you borrow
Kaylene,
the money, isn't that gonna kill the deal for me?
and that's what Kaylene was
on the
saying.
interest?
And that's what Kaylene was saying about the exit strategy, right? So it's all depending on like your exit strategy or what you're trying to do with this property. And eventually we'll go over like underwriting a little bit with the deal that we have, and we can talk about like, different exit strategies or how much you want to make from the $50,000 in your example. But yeah, it's all about your exit strategy. So yes, if $50,000 kills the deal, which it kind of makes sense. What is that? That's probably, doing some rough math in my head, is what, 20% of that 300,000 or somewhere around there, close to it. So yes, it kind of will kill the deal if you look at it from that perspective, but it's all based on your exit strategy and what you want out of the property. And then like Kaylene said as well, you can also do a hybrid deal for the 50. So that's, in a sense, the seller has the $50,000, so you carry the debt of the 250, and with the $50,000, you can have the seller carry that note, where you can make payments monthly on the $50,000, right?
Yeah,
So that will be better.
That's a venue of opportunities. Like for example, you can negotiate different ways, but one of the best ways that I see is like the owner carry those $50,000 for, let's say, 60 months. I've always tried 120 months, but let's say you don't go for that 120, he goes for 60, but with no payment, no interest. I see deals like that.
Yeah.
They carry
Yeah,
the
they carry it.
$50,000 for 60 months with no interest, no payments.
Yeah.
And,
It allows you some time to either cash them out later, or find like hard money to even cash them out, however that works, or to show that the property, because sometimes it is an investment property, to show that there is rent roll, and so then they can do like a cash out refinance, and they get a better better deal with that.
So it's a big window of
Opportunity. Yeah, sky's the limit.
Depending on your ability to negotiate.
Yes,
So
yes.
Very true.
So we're trying to help you to understand like the basics of it so that you can now start negotiating with those sellers and especially with the agents, if you're calling agents, trying to get and help them to also understand the possibilities and get them educated as well.
yeah. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah. All right. Next.
I forgot to put on
Uh,
there, but go ahead.
Other type of creative financing strategies. So you have subtel, you have novation, you have contract for deed, lease options,
And wrap. I forgot
and
wraps.
you have wraps as well.
Yeah.
So
There's even more about it.
yeah, there's more little tweaks that you can do with those.
So if you don't understand what this is, subtail is basically you're taking over that mortgage for the time being, right? So you'll just start making the payments on that. And so instead of actually getting cash out, like cashing out that $250, right? You're taking over the payments. That's only like $2,000, right? $2,000 a month. Until you fix it up and get it ready to put it on the market. Okay, so instead of putting all of that $250 in one property at one time, that investor can come in and bring in a lot smaller amount to get into the property, get it ready, and then put it on the market. Novation is a similar thing, but you actually don't own the property. You're working with the seller to fix up the property to then put it on the market for sale. But every once in a while, that seller will want to stay in the property, and that's a little bit of a drawback.
And I've also seen or been in situations where you do a novation and you literally just paint the house up and put it back on the market, right? So you don't have to really do a fix and flip. It's a good strategy for you to take the property retail when you're doing wholesale, right? We've done it before, and it helps with that fact, and you get more eyes on the deal than you would when you're just selling it wholesale. But yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, contract for deed.
And then contract for deed is similar to seller finance, but the title and the deed stays in the seller's name. So I know recently Pace was talking about how like novations are dying out just because you're not on title of the property. So like, what if the seller has an epiphany and just says, hey, I don't want to continue this transaction. Now you lost out on all the rehab you've done on the property. You got to take them to court, and that's a whole another issue. Whereas with the contract for deed, you pretty much do a seller finance, but the title stays in the seller's name. But you guys have that contract in escrow specifying as long as you're making the payments or you stay track on the terms, the title will switch. So while you're doing that, making the payments, you can in turn fix and flip the property and pay them out for that contract. And then lease options is just pretty much in a sense like a lease to own, but it's you have the option to buy the property, right? You sign a lease agreement with the seller with the option to purchase the property for an X amount of price at a certain term. I recently learned about lease options joining Sub 2, and I thought it was funny because I did stock market. I don't know if you guys know about stock markets, buys and puts. It's the same concept. A lease option is the same concept as a buy and a put with the stock option, whereas with the stocks, you have the option to buy all those shares at the end of your contract or at the end whenever you got that date, or you have the option to sell it back. So it's pretty much in a sense the same, which is funny. Any questions?
Those lease options are, to me, is my favorite. Yeah, because I used to do these things back in the 90s.
Mhm.
Like in the 93, I get like 3 lease options, and I love that because I get paid 3 times. back then.
For-
I don't know.
Now, was that on the exit? So you had a property and you leased it to someone?
What I used to do, I just find somebody that wants to do that. So I get into an agreement for the lease, how much. So I did one for, it was $1,200 a payment, okay, on the rent payment.
Yeah,
And then I sublease it for $2,000.
yeah,
I was making $800. I give the seller $1,000 option money, non-refundable.
yeah,
So that's how you convince them that this money is non-refundable. You can go and have coffee all night, you know, or drink,
Yeah.
whatever. And then, so I sublease it to somebody else. Remember that property was $250, I get it, and I sublease it for $450. And in 3 years, the guy exercised his option, so I get, and he gave me $30,000 option money, non-refundable money. So I make $29,000 at the beginning. I make $800 every month for 3 years, which I was hoping he goes the 5 years. But he exercises on the 3rd year, and then I give
The big
big chunk
when
when he exercised his option.
when he bought the property.
And all 3 were fantastic.
Yeah. So
So
yeah,
that's an option.
it's a good strategy, definitely.
Yeah,
I
but
could say.
I mean, to me, that's why, because that was easy. Now, my only worry right now is, if the law changed a little bit or whatever, you know, cause government is making a lot of tweaking.
Yeah, making
Making
sure that it
changes.
works or that the
Like, for
it
example, I
follows
don't
the
know
laws.
now, but back then, it was, lease option
It was
was
legal.
illegal in Texas. It was totally illegal.
Okay,
And then you gotta pay taxes immediately.
all right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyway, that was my,
Yeah, I know.
Thank you.
I heard
all
in
these
Texas,
other ones,
in Texas you can't
like
get contract for
Novation
deed.
and Subtail, I never hear of them. But
But, you know, those are advanced, so let's just keep going like.
Yeah,
with
today we're just
sub
gonna stick to
two.
the sub 2 and seller
Yeah,
finance,
yeah,
but
yeah.
thanks for the input. Barriers. So there are barriers to like presenting a creative finance strategy to a seller or an agent. I'm sure we've all probably, or a lot of people have experienced it when
Yeah.
they make their calls, and some of the barriers are.
Okay, what's basically is misunderstandings or the education of not only the sellers, because sellers are not used to it. Realtors are oftentimes not used to it. They don't understand subject to, as well as you wholesalers not understanding the possibilities that you do have with working with either sellers or realtors. So that's what I'm saying. Why I brought it on here is, you know, there's just some misunderstandings and some doubts. Sometimes you'll get on a call with a lot of realtors. They're like, I know that can't, my sellers don't want this, or I don't believe that can work, or that, you know, they're not educated. So we're educating all involved, right? So that's where we're helping you to become educated. And then you can start educating the realtors. Then, of course, the realtors will educate the sellers. So we'll start with you, right? Go ahead. Basically, qualifying potential properties, right? So what to look for.
So motivation, pain, can't see that.
Yeah.
But yeah, pain. Well,
People
when
can see
it
that.
comes to subject to, I really think a lot of sellers, they're in that pain category. So pre-foreclosure, divorce, they're in the army and they're being moved out, right? When it comes to seller finance, I think a lot of those sellers are looking for gain, right? Because they want to make interest on their money, or they don't want to deal with tenants and you're continuing to pay them monthly, or you guys figure out a way that you can pay them more than what the property is worth. But also, when it comes to sub 2, you're looking for pretty much low equity properties. It would be a little difficult at a high equity property, like Kaylene was saying. a lot of people do have equity in California, so when you do run across that, you probably want to pivot to doing some type of a hybrid deal to pay that equity off. But if you're just doing a straight sub-2 flat, giving somebody whatever, the property's worth $1 million and you're giving them $600,000 of the million, you might as well make that a cash deal at that point, right? So you're pretty much looking for slow equity. You're looking for pre-foreclosure, like I said, divorce, people that need to sell fast. Also times you have distressed properties as well, like bought the property, tore it up, still have the note on the property. So, you know, you can get in there and try to get that.
Yes, but so even distressed properties, when their mortgage is more, you know, they can't just cash it out. You can't just make it a cash deal, right? You can't wholesale that as a cash deal if it has more than 70 or 75%, you know, of the mortgage is more than that. And so that's when we can come in and use the sub-2 strategy to get into the deal, fix it up, flip it real quick, you know. Either flip it or sell it to an investor for if it makes sense for those buyers, right?
Yeah, and then I think, like, you know, that 2020 wave, everybody pretty much paid over asking price for properties. So you have those people out there that are running around with low equity, right? And some of these people get a divorce or get into pre-foreclosure. So that's when you come through with presenting the sub-2 option to them, to where you don't have, where they can walk away from the property, at least with some money. There have been situations where I've looked at deals and the guy has a note of a mortgage of $500,000 and the realtor listed it for $500, right? So, or the realtor listed it, let's say the realtor listed it for $515, $520. If you really think about that, that seller may come out of pocket to sell that property after closing costs and commissions, right? So that's when you come in with your sub-2 strategy and you say, hey, look, you know, I don't know if your realtor told you, but, you know, you're not going to make $1 from the sale of this property, or you may come out of pocket. So how about I give you $15,000 instead of you spending $15,000, and I take over the mortgage, right? And I make the payments. So that's why.
But even less, like try and get it, of course, lower
Or free.
You know,
It's been
sometimes they just hand you the keys. They're like, I can't make the payments anymore. It's too much for me. You know, here, you know, and so you can take over that property, you know, for possibly even zero in. That's what's zero down.
Yeah, like
And that happens.
I had a property in Idlewild, the mountains. The guy just recently bought it, picked up a rehab loan on the property. Pretty much invested about $700,000 into this property, but the property was only worth about $5. So he was an agent as well. He tried to sell it on the market for the $7, but obviously the market dictated that the property's not worth $700,000. So he literally was begging us to take the property, like, please make the mortgage payments. I can't make it. My wife is killing me because I'm coughing up $4,500 a month on a property. And yeah, so it does happen in those situations, right? People will sometimes pay you. I literally, like, I had a fix and flip in Detroit, and I was willing to pay someone to take this property off my head just because it's like, it's hemorrhaging money every month. I'm not making money. So there are situations, you know, and you can find them.
Yep. Okay. Some of the things that we just brought up, you know, how to talk with, like, the agents, right? I even forget what it says. Properties that are
not moving or selling.
Right? They're
Not moving or selling.
if they're not selling, right? There's some properties that are on the market that are just sitting there. They've been on the market for a long time. If they're just sitting there, that means that there is, you know, they would either have to bring the price down, or, you know, in order for that property to sell. So it, I have to go back. Huh?
So, well, yeah, going back to not moving or selling
There you
while they're fixing it.
go. You got it. Go back up, please, on this.
Yeah, the mouse just disappears.
Can't you just drag the bar?
Okay, but you don't have to do the mouse if you do your arrow keys. to go up and down on the slides.
No, your mouse disappeared on
We
this.
can't find the
I think the cursor disappears when we share it. That's what it looks like.
yeah.
So it's doesn't
Okay. Okay, well, we'll continue to go on while they're figuring that out.
Zoom
But
doesn't see
this is what someone told me recently, because I'm not an agent, but a lot of agents do understand what's called seller carryback. And so that's the wording that I put on here for that. You know, if they're willing to seller carry back the equity,
There you
that's
go.
basically seller financing, right? So if that seller is willing to seller finance some of that equity, we can make it a hybrid deal where we take over the payments subject to, right? And then the seller is
yeah.
carrying
Like,
back.
Yeah, or
the
even
equity.
or even purchase it seller finance, right? Agents, I don't know why, but I say seller finance and they act like they don't know what I'm talking about. But then if you say seller carry, right, or seller carry back, most agents will understand that term rather than just like, you know, they think sub 2 is called as assumable or assuming a loan. It's just, I don't know, word play with them, but you can also say seller carry back, like, hey, I'll seller carry the property, or if the seller's willing to carry the property, the note.
You know, talking to agents about if their clients are willing to sell their property with the buyer, you know, making payments on that mortgage. So, and basically helping the agent start to understand that now the buyer is going to be making payments on that mortgage. And so we call it subject to, they are still learning that term, right? So, and then properties that are considered for a short sale, like what we said, low equity or no equity in the property. Oftentimes they have to put it on the market as a short sale, but before that, we can actually make it, turn it into a subject to deal instead of having them
Short sell it.
make it a short
Yeah, you can try to get in, and if you have, especially if you have a relationship with the agent, right? Instead of them short selling it, you know, you can do something creative to where the seller can walk away with some type of money. Yes.
On that short sale, you deal with the bank or with the?
No, so we're not doing a short sale. So I know a lot of agents, when they run across properties with little to no equity, they try to short sell that property. That's their strategy, right? Just because the property's not selling on the market, so they'll go to the bank and try to qualify for a short sale, which if nobody knows what a short sale is, the bank dictates a number and says, like, you know, say the guy wants to sell it for 700, the bank says, hey, look, you can short sell it, whatever. I've never done one, I'm not an agent, but the bank comes back and says, sell it for 400. We'll take 400 for the property, and that's a short sale.
But that's because the debt is a certain amount. Let's say it's
Yeah.
600. The debt is 600K.
Mm-hmm.
But the ARV is 600, right? And they can't make their money. The bank won't be able to
Make their 600 back.
make their 600 back, and so they are willing to take less, you know, on that mortgage. But then, you know, it's hard on the seller as well because they are ending up, you know, money out of their pocket.
Yeah, so we don't
do that.
do short selling, but, you know, like I said,
The
instead of,
properties that are considered
yeah,
for
it's
a short sale.
So is the agent who
The
deals with the bank and
yeah, they're
Give it
short
to
selling
us.
the property.
at the lower price?
Yes.
The
So-
owner is
Or at least
probably in
14.
conversation with the bank already, and so the bank is probably considering the short sale
Yeah.
price.
So what I also heard is if it's on the market already as a short sale, then you can't really take over the mortgage, that short sale mortgage, like even considered at that new price because of the due on sale clause that is going to be a part of
Yeah.
every mortgage.
Yeah,
Okay.
For my understanding, once you get there, it's kind of no man's land when it comes to sub 2, right? If they're like approved for a short sale, there's that property is pretty much a short sale
Yeah,
property.
so if it sells, it sells, it sells. If it doesn't, then they lose that contract. Of course, the agent will lose that contract. But then you can, after the agent isn't involved, you can go direct to seller to try and buy that property.
So from my understanding, before we get to a short sale, if someone is in a NOD, if we could get them to modify their loan, there's still a chance to save it for us up to, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, if you can modify the loan, yeah, you can save it from like a foreclosure, right? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Yeah, you can save it from a foreclosure rather than them having to short sell
And then
it.
if they're
It's
able
been-
to modify, then we could step in.
Yeah.
So yes, you can step in and purchase sub to. I think Davey said he was on the phone with somebody about
Yeah.
that today.
So you could sub to either the loan that's in foreclosure, but you could also sub to the actual loan mod as well. So you can do either way.
Yeah.
With loan mod, it's a little bit tougher because now the bank has evolved and now they see what's going on.
Yeah,
And
now
so-
you're on the radar.
Yeah, you're on the radar.
Their eyes are more open to what's going on, and so
Yeah.
it's probably better to do it before it goes to loan mod.
Okay.
But we are doing like deals that's gone through loan mod, so you can do either way, before the loan modification, but also after as well.
Okay.
So, but there's more risk once you go into the loan modification process.
Yeah, well, because if they catch it, then.
The
yeah.
dual on
So they'll
sale.
see the
Yeah.
and then there's dual on sales and stuff like that.
Yeah, so it can be flagged after the loan mod.
Okay. So I know that a lot of you are working with agents, but if you can do direct to seller, that's even better because then we're not needing to pay the agent or even educate the agent. We're just educating the seller. And those will be even less money in when purchasing the property because you're working directly with the seller and you won't have any agent fees. So when talking to the seller, finding out if they're willing to take payments for their equity or for whatever, if they're basically willing to take payments would mean either that they're willing for payments to be made on their mortgage or that payments on their equity, right? And so these are some of the benefits to the seller. Also, less
Taxes.
taxes.
So yeah, so like with seller finance, if they're willing to take payments, that's a way to approach the seller. And taxes, right? If they do a seller finance, they can defer their taxes, right? So if you seller finance me your house for $500,000 and I only pay 10% down, whatever a month, you're not going to pay taxes on the $500,000, right? That year. So it's a benefit for a seller if you present that. Yeah.
Yeah, want to go into that a little bit more because I do have a scenario right now up in Hellendale where I am direct to seller with the guy. He is looking at moving back into the property for 5 years. That way he doesn't get the capital gains tax. I brought this up to him. I'm going to be honest, I'm a little bit ignorant on the whole tax side of it. So he is running it past his basically a CPA. But how we can explain that a little bit more because he's willing to
Do
finance it out. Yeah, he just doesn't want to hit capital gains tax.
So in layman terms, pretty much you can't be taxed on money you don't have,
Okay.
right? So the government cannot tax you or tax your seller on that total amount of what sold at or what it recorded at, just because you don't have that money, right? They are going to tax you on what you receive. So if you paid them the whatever 10% down, they'll be taxed on that, or whatever monthly payments they receive throughout that year. They have to record that, right, on their taxes, and that's what they get taxed on. They won't get taxed on the total.
So instead
Sale
of the
price.
total $300K or whatever, it's going to be just the monthly payments. It's going to be just the 10% down.
Yeah.
So they'll be taxed less. So he doesn't have to move back into the property if he doesn't need to, if he doesn't want to. But if he and he can move on with his life. He doesn't have to just because of capital gains.
Yeah, he can get it like they say defer, right?
Yeah.
Defer the taxes that
Yeah,
way.
defer it.
Yeah, so that's a benefit if he thinks about that. And then like if he's like not wanting to pay taxes for like this tax season, you can also do something, some type of strategy where he hands over the title without any money, and then you start making payments next year or something like that, right? So now next year he has to make the payments on. He has to pay the taxes on the money you've paid him.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, in general, the seller will make more money from the sale than a traditional sale, than a take it to market.
Yeah, he definitely can, right? Because you're seller financing it. So it's all based on like how creative you can get with your terms, right? So most people that are doing creative financing, they're looking for some type of cash flow, but you do have people with the tax part that are looking to get depreciation or whatnot. But if the guy wants to make the most he can make from the property and you're selling it and he wants to sell it seller finance, that's a way he can make a lot of money, especially if you attach interest, right? Because at the end of a 30-year, I'm not a mathematician, but you can make a lot of money with a 3% interest at the end of 30 years on just the interest alone, rather than, just selling it traditionally and you done.
Okay, David.
Any questions? Any other questions?
Okay.
Just to comment as far as like the benefits and why a buyer would buy a creative deal
Mhm.
is the interest rate. So when you're negotiating with the sellers, if they are open to carrying the loan, because I've seen a lot of terms where the seller was like, okay, give me 10% interest rate or give me an 8% interest rate, right? So when you consider what the interest rate it is today, so when you're trying to dispo or when you're trying to be a buyer yourself, you have to consider what the interest rate is, right? Or what the terms are. So when you do talk to the agents and the seller, always know, put yourself in the position as a buyer, right? Or when you dispo it. And so when you're negotiating with the seller or the agent, you would, figure out what the down payment that the seller needs, but also what the interest rate would be, right? So, say like a seller wants 50% down and 10% interest rate. That's not a deal, right?
That means that their motivation is not, their
Right.
pain is not big enough,
Right.
right? They're still trying to gouge or pull out everything that they can out of that.
Trying to milk you.
And
Yeah.
try to milk it.
Yeah, that's the importance of check and ask questions when you first get in contact with the person.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
Kay said, you gotta find the bunnies,
Yeah, you definitely have to like do your homework, right? Get the mortgage statement, the interest rates, or even if you're going seller finance, you kind of ask the guy like, what do you want? Me, honestly, when I do seller finance, I don't ever bring up interest.
Right.
I'm just like, what do you want to get paid monthly? And we keep it at that. And then if they say, okay, well, what about the interest? And I tell them like, honestly, I am just illiterate when it comes to numbers. I know nothing about amortization. So I cannot attach a 3% interest and pay you interest every month because I don't know how much I'm paying on the principal. So how about we just figure out what you want every month and I can pay you that.
And we can make
right?
it work.
And we can make a deal, right? Or how much do you want for the property? You don't have to do a 30-year note. I know some people are fixated on that. Like it can be 40, it can be 50, it can be 60, it can be 100. And even if you are having a balloon, you can amortize it for 40, 50, 60, or 100. You don't have to keep it at 30, right? I did a seller finance deal where, to be honest, I don't even know the amortization. I just knew the seller wanted, I think he wanted like $1,800 a month. Like I don't know what it amortized to, but that's how we wrote the promissory note. Like he's gonna get $1,800 a month, and the deal was made that way.
Okay. Another reason, like what we said, APR or the interest rates, right? Because they have been so low, we actually want to take advantage of all of those mortgages that have 2%, 3%, 4% interest rates. Like for me, I'm gonna keep my house because I got an interest rate at 2.9, right? I'm keeping that, right? If I'm not gonna be selling that anytime soon.
Well,
Because of the interest
whenever
rate.
you think I'm selling it, give my number. Right?
Right? Okay. So, exactly,
Me too.
right? So we're hoping to take over all of those mortgages that have those interest rates instead of these 6 and 8% interest rates that you see now, right? And so those are like in 2020, 2021, you'll see a lot of those. So any of those in that date range, that have the really low interest rates, we would love to substitute all of those mortgages. That's another huge benefit to doing this, right?
Yeah.
Because you have those lower payments, monthly payments, right? So you have a lower monthly payment. It's also been paid down a couple years. on that mortgage. Like you'll be able to sub to mortgages that have been there for 10, 15 years. That means that on that amortization schedule, we are now on that back end of
Now you're
it.
attacking the principal.
Yeah.
Now you're attacking the principal. We
Ching, ching.
want to take over those,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
that just gives me chills, right? Those are what we're looking for.
Yeah. And
Those are we're looking for the.
And I tell my team, when you're talking to these people, you have to, it's all negotiation. So I was telling Kaylene and them yesterday, I think of like levers, right? You have 3 levers. You have the down payment, you have the interest, and you have like your cash flow lever, right? So you kind of have to figure out what you want to negotiate on and what you're willing to give away. Like if you do give away 15% down, the seller has that lever, right? That's down to the seller. If you get a 2% interest, you got that, right? Now, if your monthly payments are $3,000, but it only rents for $3,000, the seller has that lever. So you got to kind of like figure out where you want to win when you're negotiating, like what of these, and we will go over underwriting briefly, but like
Yeah, I think we
With-
can use
with
that board.
with underwriting,
We might be able to use that board.
yeah, when you get a deal, if you can just quickly underwrite it, that kind of gives you a better perspective of like, is it a deal or not? But like Pace has recently been saying, a lot of people are not looking to cash flow, but then obviously nobody's looking to lose money. So even if you're not cash flowing, if you're at negative every month, that's just throw that deal away.
But understanding buyers, I think that's where Mike definitely comes in. He knows his buyers, so you ask him, do you if it cash flows just a little bit, then maybe the buyer will come in and want to buy the property for the other benefits of the owning the property, and that's the depreciation and the appreciation and the tax benefits. So don't throw out any deal if it doesn't cash flow. Plus, we're going to explain a little bit more about like what we need to see. So let's keep going on that.
Well, one more comment on that too.
Mhm.
So a lot of buyers too today who's buying creative deals, a lot of them don't even look at cash flow. Like Kaylene was saying that they will depreciate, right? And also a lot of buyers are looking at other exit strategies too instead of long-term rentals. There's people who's doing short-term rentals and also mid-term rentals,
Midterm.
also group living, assisted living. So if a property doesn't cash flow as a long-term rental, it doesn't mean that it's not a good deal, right? So the deal with a lot of buyers is they want that low interest rate. That's what they're looking for, the low interest rate, and also low entry as well, right? So you look at, okay, how much equity and how much does the seller want, right? And so you need to consider
Cash on cash a
cash
little
on
bit.
cash, yeah, right. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna definitely cover a little more. But
If I could share something
Uh-huh.
real quick. One business model that my old family friend and commercial broker that I used to work with, what they're doing right now is that they're leasing properties, doing like a lease option with them,
Mhm.
and they're getting them near hospitals to do residency stays because the hospitals will actually pay the rents.
Yeah.
So just kind of one that I haven't heard too many people
furnished finder and nurse, what is it called?
Do they have a contract with the hospital for the residents, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
They do.
Yeah, so they go to the hospital and then set up the contracts that way.
Okay.
And yeah, the hospital kicks in the rent.
Yeah. I know like a coworker. She's in like some of the leaderships in the hospital. She was saying how they do like look for places for the residents, right? Housing for the residents, and it does make sense. And I think your buyer pool is very important. Like if you know your buyer pool and if you can find a group of buyers, yeah, that's important. Like some people say get the buyer first. I'm hard-headed, so I don't. But it's smart too because you know your buyer pool. So like like okay, hey, I know somebody that wants that deal. Even if you don't negotiate it yourself, and like say Kaylene finds a deal, but it makes sense for your buyer. You guys can JV and bring that deal to a close.
Yeah, so like one thing that they were saying because of that, if you could get the bed and bathroom just to match or the closest that you can,
Mm-hmm.
the more you could get it, like basically in the rents, because then every person has their own bathroom, and they were breaking it down. They're like, that's almost the difference between like $500 to $600 per month, and every single room that you're renting out.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
just a thought, because I know they buy them.
Yeah. That's good. That's
Davey,
good.
are you looking at comments or?
Yeah, anybody from the internet?
Yeah, I'm on there, but nobody's chatting.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Yeah. Alright,
Is it working?
right here.
There go the cursor.
There it is.
There you go. Just push down.
Alright.
Okay, so we have a handout. It's basically what you want to explain it because
Yeah.
it's yours.
So it just goes over briefly like things you can send to like an agent. So like frequently asked questions they ask, like one is what happens if you miss a payment, who's responsible for the repairs, you know, what happens if the house gets trashed.
Is there any way to get that so that we can send it to everyone that's on Zoom too?
Yeah, I can put it in the
Okay.
group chat.
Okay,
Yeah, I can.
just when you can. You
I can put the
email it
link
to
in the
one
group
of us.
chat. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it's kind of something. Honestly, my team emails this literally this whole thing to the agent.
Mhm.
So because like you have agents that are open to sub 2, but they don't want to look like an idiot in front of their seller. I mean, yeah, in front of their seller. So then if you know, give them some information, then they can go back and answer some of their sellers' questions to like, you know, what happens if the property gets trashed? What happens if the note gets called due, right? Things like that.
So yeah, I would probably go through that and maybe highlight or find all the things that you're gonna need to kind of understand when talking with realtors, because this is exactly what he sends to the realtors, you know, to answer the questions and maybe even go over it with the realtors.
Yeah, and like learning it yourself, right? You kind of get a better understanding of like how to present, because like literally we're negotiating with people, right? Buyers, I mean seller or realtor, even buyer sometimes. I had a buyer like want the deal, but almost gonna pull out because the due on sell clause, and I literally had to just like educate him on like this is what you can do if it gets caught due, you know. And it took forever pulling teeth just for him to like understand like okay, you know, there's a way out of that, so I'll buy it. So it's good to educate buyers, sellers,
Yeah.
realtors.
So you don't need to go through a foreclosure process if they don't pay?
If it gets caught due,
Yeah.
if it gets
Or no, like if they don't pay, if the buyer doesn't pay.
with the
Deed in
performance
lieu.
deed or the deed in lieu, yes, you don't. But the deed in lieu is kind of tricky because I know it says there that the what's it called, the agency that takes the money. But pretty much the deed in lieu is tricky because like you'll hold the paper or somebody needs to hold that paper, and whoever holds,
Servicing company, is that what you're talking about?
whoever holds the deed in lieu, they can literally just go record it. So if let's say Davey sells me his property sub 2 and he has the deed in lieu, and you know one day he's just like, you know, F Justin, he can literally take it to the courthouse and record that and get the title back into his name. So it is kind of tricky. I try not to bring that up and as a piece of, you know, to use, but it is there to use if something happens.
Oh, okay.
Like you don't have to go through the foreclosure
But
process.
but
Just record it.
helping the realtors know and the sellers know that they're covered, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna send it to the other group while you talk.
So they basically we let them know that there's going to be a servicing company, right? That servicing company will pay out the every month, pay the payments to the bank every month, and they will send an email to you to the buyer and send the email to the seller saying saying that is paid every month. And so it helps them to understand that it gives them a little more security, knowing that, you know, because one of the questions is what happens if you stop paying the payments on that mortgage? And you say, well, we have this servicing company that we use. It's a third party, and you know, it takes the money from my bank, and it puts it in, and it pays the payment on their bank, on their bank, on their mortgage, and I'm trying to remember what else, because they often have that question, you know. And then of course there's the option if we do stop making the payments, then yes, they could foreclose on us and they can take the whole property back, plus all of the payments that we have already made
And the
on
down
that.
payment, yeah.
And the down payment, everything. So we would miss out, right? We would be losing all of those payments that we had just made on your mortgage.
And I hear Pay saying that, that happens very rapidly, like, I don't know, if I hear him saying that, the first month you don't make your payment, that service company let you know, and then due to the paperwork, they get their property current and all the money you invest on that.
Yeah, all the money that you've already invested in.
Yeah, that's really dependent on the promissory note and what's spelled out on like the default, right? So it really depends on what's on contract. So it could be 30 days, 60 days, but usually there's an option to cure. So instead of like a deed in lieu right away, we try to make it open to that the buyer or the owner has the option to cure the defaults, right? Instead of a deed in lieu.
Yeah. So, any other questions or?
You mean like pay what they're behind on? Like catch
Yeah,
up?
yeah. You wanna
Catch up.
be able to talk to the seller and the owner, because sometimes the lender now the owner, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe they don't want the property back. It's like I don't want the property back, right? So you want to be able to kind of go in conversation and say, okay, so how do you want to cure this default, right? Do you want the deed back? It's almost like dealing with a bank, right? Like
Yeah.
you want to let's consider some type of loan mod or something, or some type of payment plan or something like that, right?
So if they still default, then you would have to file foreclosure.
Right,
Okay.
right,
So it's either or, like either you do a deed in lieu or.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do that at the end.
But
Justin?
are we not done? Sorry.
I'm not
Yeah,
sure
because this
exactly
is just the facts, and then we're
Oh,
not in
sorry.
questions yet. We're not done yet.
Sorry. There we go.
I mean, but we do have, what do we
I don't
have?
see that.
Just,
We
Oh,
have your
oops.
calculator in there. You're probably sharing the spreadsheet.
There we go. Thank you.
okay, so we have a couple more, so keep going down.
Alright.
For the next one.
Sorry.
Okay, so basically when working with us and so that we can help you in structuring these creative deals, there are certain things that we need to know from the seller, right? If there's a mortgage on the property, we'll need the PITI, the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, right? We need the amount for that. We need to know what type of loan it is, because that also determines on if we are able to take it over, subject to. We need the interest rate. That's going to be a good indicator on if it makes a good deal or not. And we need to know if it's fixed, adjustable, interest only. We have a deal, or Keegley has a deal where it's multifamily and it has an interest only mortgage on it. So we're gonna maybe look at that one soon. And then just also how many years are left on the loan. Like we said, it's good to know how many years it has already been paid down and how many more are left on the loan. So
Questions?
Huh?
Yeah.
So I did come across a seller that has a hard money loan that they used for like a primary loan
Yeah.
that's now come due
Okay.
after 5 years and they're in default now. Is that something you can still sub to, or because that's
So-
an interest only loan that she had too, right?
So with a hard money lender, it matters, right? Because even with a bank, you negotiate, like if you're doing a loan mod, right, or whatnot. If you can go back to the hard money lender and negotiate something to where the lender doesn't want their money right away, then you can sub to it. You can make it a deal. But if you're taking over the property, I don't know how much they owe to
is
the
it
hard
a
money
single
lender.
family or is it multifamily?
She has 5 single families.
How much does she owe?
Um,
So yeah, if and it all like Davey was saying too, like your entry fee, right? All based on your entry fee. So technically with your deal, you have to pay back that lender because it's a hard money lender. Unless you can negotiate something with the hard money lender, like can we extend it for a few more years or whatever I don't know. Or you can find another hard money lender to replace that one, right?
Yeah.
So, you can figure something out, but
Or a DSCR loan, right?
yeah, you can go get like a DSCR loan somewhere. But yeah, you can definitely find another lender to replace that traditional lender.
But the deal definitely has to, we have to figure out what the exit strategy is, right? If there's five homes under that one loan, is that right? Like
No,
something,
they each have their own individual.
they each have their own loan
Yeah.
and it's a hard money. And, you may have to negotiate, if there's any, equity, they can't be asking for too much more, right? Because you eventually will have to refinance it and with a new loan, with a loan that actually makes sense for a long term.
Yeah, it's good to find out what that
Because-
hard money lender has on that property, right? Kind of figure out what that amount is, and then like they're human beings, right? Call them, negotiate, figure something out. Like, hey, can we extend it for 5 more years? Something to see if it can pan out, or find another lender to replace that lender if it's not a crazy amount. There are people that are willing to invest in people's property, so.
And then very important to find out what the interest rate he's
Yeah,
got
it's
in
usually high.
those
Yeah.
loans.
But hard money is usually
Usually
higher.
high.
Or it's interest only, so it may pan out for the payment. So it's good to just, like Kaylene was saying, definitely, right, go get that statement from those property owners. Try to acquire that statement, look what they're paying that lender or what they owe that hard money lender. And if you can get in contact with the lender and see if you can negotiate something, because I know hard money lenders, I don't know if, I'm sure you guys have experience, but I know most of them, when that note's due, they kind of want their money, right? They're not looking to.
Yeah, they're hard asses.
Yeah, they're hard asses. Whereas like with the bank, sometimes you can negotiate, right? You can see if you can put it as a silent second, whatever is owed or something like that. But these people, they're hard asses.
So you have to see kind of the whole deal. The whole strategy depends on what could be, as well as like what the buyers are looking for as well. So Davey, can you go next? Okay,
Information we
Right.
need to know for a deal. So arrears.
yeah, continuing with that, we still need to know if there's any arrears, late payments, or liens on the property, because that will also, we'll need to know that in underwriting the deals, right? And then, of course, condition, because we need to know how much money is going to need to be spent to either fix it or make it, depending on the exit strategy, if you're going to actually make it rent ready or if you're going to take it to market. Those are two different things. You would have to spend different amounts of money for the different buyers or the different exit strategies. And
when like I underwrite my deals, I take into consideration the rehab cost. So if I'm looking at most of the deals, we're looking like 8 to like 10, 11, 12% all in, and all in will include rehab. So if I gotta spend $40,000, the house is only worth $400,000, and I gotta spend $40,000 for the rehab, I'm ready 10% just for the rehab. So giving the seller money on top of the agent is gonna kill the deal. So condition of the property is big, but like Kaylene said too, definitely like your exit strategy, right? So like whether you're gonna wholesale it, you're gonna keep it yourself, if you know your exit strategy, you know your buyer pool, you can figure a way out, that works depending on any condition of the property.
Yeah, and that's the next slide too, or maybe not. Yeah, because this is what an investor has to consider, what PACE has even asked us to consider when considering an entry fee, right? Because it's not just going to be the down payment. It's going to include cash to seller, if there's any arrears, late payments, liens, agent's commission or assignment fee, right? closing costs, and right, rehab, renovations, and then also maintaining the property depending on how, if they're going to keep it for a certain amount of time to then resell it, right? So maintaining the property until you can either sell it or rent it out, right? And then marketing costs to either market to buyers or later on maybe even another agent commission if they're going to sell it. Like that's all of the 7 parts to that entry fee. So
Yeah, so definitely like when you're looking at a deal, you kind of want to get these information. So like be a detective, whatever, be a doctor, go in there and dig these out, especially if you're buying from a wholesaler, but get these out before you pitch it out to someone else. Know what you want for your assignment fee, know what the seller wants, know if there's late payments or liens, right? Closing costs, rehab costs, because it makes it better for someone to underwrite the deal when all these informations are presented, because you can get into a deal, and I've seen it all the time, especially on Facebook, where a wholesaler would just like, sub 2 deal, 20,000 to seller, right? Or whatever, $20,000 assignment fee, that's what they say, or $20,000 to acquire the property. And you're like, yo, where's this $20,000 going? Like, are there any, whatever, what's the condition? What's the closing cost, right? So you definitely put that into play. I technically, when it comes to maintaining property, I also put into play 3 months of just holding costs. So that's like what I'm gonna pay on the mortgage for 3 months. So I'll calculate that into like my entry fee and take that into consideration when I'm looking at like a cash on cash return.
mm-hmm.
Any questions?
Yeah, so we're probably going to be asking probably more of that when you bring a deal to us to see if it's a good deal. We want to know more of this information, and we'll help you out. But yeah, just go to the next slide, and this is kind of where we were at. So
Yeah.
an all in total entry fee should fall between 8 and 12% down. That is a good deal and can be sold relatively quickly.
Yeah.
Is that down from like the mortgage note balance, or?
That's all those 7. So if you go
Yeah,
back up on that slide,
go back.
So all of this
all in
should come around 8 to 12% of the total sell price of the property.
Sales price of the property.
Yeah, so if you're looking at $1 million property, all that should cost about $80,000 to acquire that property, right? Or whatever, $120,000. Because like, yeah, once you're getting up north of that, I've seen 15, 16, but like once you're at 20, 30%, anybody with a post can go to the bank and
But we're gonna show you how you can actually get to these numbers, right? Because we are working with taking over payments subject to, and then seller financing, hopefully some of that equity, and only a percentage into the property can get it to this 8 to 12%. So instead of paying a cash deal of 70%, you can get in for even less into the deal, and it's better on all.
And then like we put an asterisk here, it's all dependent on the buyer. That's heavy, like with taxes, right? So
Kind of what we talked to you about earlier.
Yeah, so if a buyer's looking to save money on depreciation, they may not care about throwing down 20% on a property, right? Or 30% or 15%, so, or if a person has a different exit strategy where they're doing a group home or something like that, and they know that they can super cash flow, they probably wouldn't care about throwing 15 or 20% down on a property. And then if they, especially with the interest rate thing, right? So especially if they can get a 2% interest rate and they pay 20% down, a lot of people will probably pull the trigger on that. But just to play it safe when you are looking at deals, you kind of want to play it safe so you have more of a buyer pool. And with that, most buyers, pretty much, I'm sure all of us here will like to acquire a property at 8% down for everything, right? So, you know, that's kind of a good litmus scale to place when you're looking at deals.
Okay, going, and I think we're, so are we ready to do some examples?
There we go, sorry.
Right. So you want
A mortgage of $500,000 and the realtor